I caught my fiancé and stepsister cheating. Then I found out they were also plotting to steal my family's company. They say you should never mix business with pleasure. I learned that lesson the hard way when I caught my fiancé in bed with my stepsister. The same day, I discovered they'd been secretly working together to destroy my family's company. Now they're about to learn why the old saying, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned," exists for a reason. My name is Elena, and at 25, I watched my family's century-old shipping empire nearly burn to the ground. But like a phoenix, I rose from those ashes, stronger, wiser, and with a vengeance that would make Machiavelli proud. Let me tell you how it all unfolded. Richardson Global Logistics wasn't just a company. It was my birthright. My great-grandfather built it from nothing in 1924, transforming a single cargo ship into an international shipping empire. The company had always passed to the firstborn son, until my father, James Richardson IV, broke tradition by naming me his successor. I practically grew up in those offices, learning every aspect of the business while other kids were playing with dolls. My mother, Victoria, was our CFO and helped shape me into the businesswoman I would become. We were the perfect power family. Dad is CEO, Mom is CFO, and me learning at their feet. That all changed the day Mom's private jet went down over the Pacific. No survivors, no bodies, just questions that would haunt us forever. Dad fell apart. For 2 years, he was a ghost in a suit, going through the motions. That's when Catherine Mitchell sashayed into our lives, all designer suits and perfectly practiced sympathy. She was our new corporate lawyer, brought in to handle the insurance settlement from Mom's crash. She also brought along 2 children from her previous marriage, Marcus, 28, and Olivia, 23. Looking back, I should have seen through Catherine's act. The way she positioned herself as Dad's shoulder to cry on, how she slowly became indispensable to him. Within a year, she was sharing his bed. Within 18 months, she was sharing his last name. I try to be happy for Dad. Catherine seemed genuine enough, and God knows he needed something to live for again. Marcus took a position in our finance department, and Olivia joined our PR team. We all played happy family, and for a while it worked. Then I met Alexander. He was brilliant, charming, and happened to be our biggest competitor's head of international operations. Our relationship was straight out of a romance novel. Secret meetings, passionate nights, and promises of a future together. When he proposed 6 months later, I thought I'd found my fairy tale ending. Dad was concerned about the potential conflict of interest, but Alexander suggested a merger between our companies as a solution. It seemed perfect. That's when things started going wrong. First, mysterious leaks about our trade routes began appearing. Major clients suddenly pulled out of long-standing contracts. Our stock price started to slip. Dad was convinced we had a mole, but every investigation turned up empty. Then came the diagnosis. Aggressive pancreatic cancer. 6 months at most, the doctors said. Dad insisted on announcing my succession immediately, wanting to ensure a smooth transition. The board meeting was set for Monday. The Friday before, I decided to surprise Alexander at his office. He'd been working late a lot, claiming he was finalizing the merger details. Instead, I found him bent over his desk with Olivia, my sweet stepsister, in a position that had nothing to do with corporate mergers. The betrayal struck deep, but it was what I overheard before they noticed me that truly shattered my world. They were laughing about how easy it had been to manipulate me, to feed information to their shell companies that had been slowly buying up our stock. The merger wasn't meant to unite our companies. It was a hostile takeover in disguise. I didn't confront them. Instead, I silently closed the door and walked away, my mind racing. That's when I spotted Marcus leaving the building. The pieces started falling into place. The leaks, the client losses, the convenient timing of everything. It had been a coordinated attack from all sides. I drove straight to Uncle Robert, my mother's best friend and my godfather. He took one look at my face and poured us both a stiff drink. As I spilled everything, he started pulling up files on his computer. Turns out, he'd been investigating some irregularities he'd noticed in our company's trading patterns. Together, we began to unravel the full scope of the betrayal. Catherine wasn't just a grieving widow's shoulder to cry on. She'd been corporate counsel for Alexander's company years ago. The plane crash that killed my mother? The investigation had been suspiciously brief, with Catherine handling all the paperwork. Every major client we'd lost had been approached by shell companies connected to Alexander's firm, with Marcus providing insider information about our vulnerabilities. The next 2 months were a blur of secret meetings, hidden recordings, and careful documentation, all while I had to sit across the dinner table from the people who were trying to destroy everything my family had built. I watched Dad grow weaker, knowing I couldn't burden him with the truth in his final days. The night before the board meeting, I found him in his study, looking at old photos. He smiled when he saw me, patted the seat next to him, and handed me an envelope. "Your mother wanted you to have this when the time was right," he said. Inside was a letter and a USB drive. The letter was dated 1 week before her death. Mom had been investigating discrepancies in our Asian shipping routes that connected to Alexander's company. The USB contained all her findings, including evidence of corporate espionage that went back years. She'd been onto them, and they'd silenced her. Dad passed away that night in his sleep. I held his hand until the end, promising him I would protect his legacy. The board meeting the next morning had a really good timing. Alexander and Olivia arrived together, not even bothering to hide their relationship anymore. Catherine and Marcus sat smugly, thinking they had everything under control. That's when Uncle Robert and I dropped our bombshell. We had everything: the shell companies, the insider trading, the evidence of their involvement in Mom's death. But our masterstroke? While they'd been busy trying to sink our company, I'd been quietly buying up their vulnerabilities. By the time we finished our presentation, we owned controlling interest in Alexander's company through our own network of shell corporations. The look on their faces as security escorted them out was almost worth all the pain they'd caused. Almost. The aftermath was spectacular. Alexander and Marcus are facing federal charges for securities fraud and corporate espionage. Catherine's role in my mother's death is being investigated by the FBI. Olivia, the only one smart enough to turn state's evidence, is somewhere in witness protection. But the real victory wasn't just exposing their betrayal. It was rebuilding something stronger from the ruins they left behind. I modernized our operations, expanded into new markets, and implemented the sustainable shipping practices Mom had always dreamed about. Our stock price has quadrupled. Last week, I visited Mom and Dad's graves. As I stood there, telling them about our latest successes, I felt a peace I haven't known in years. The company isn't just surviving, it's thriving. And me? I'm not the same naive girl who thought she needed a man to complete her fairy tale. They say success is the best revenge, but I disagree. Success isn't revenge, it's justice. It's taking everything they tried to destroy and building it into something so magnificent that they have to live with the knowledge that they could have been part of it. Instead, they'll spend the next 20 years watching from behind bars as I turn Richardson Global Logistics into the most powerful shipping company in the world. But victory isn't as sweet as I imagined. Last month, I received a letter from Olivia in witness protection. She confessed everything. How Alexander had manipulated her from the start, using her childhood insecurities and daddy issues to turn her against me. He'd convinced her that I was the villain, that I'd stolen the life that should have been hers. The worst part? She actually believed she was in love with him. The letter included evidence that Alexander had been playing an even longer game than we realized. He'd orchestrated his first meeting with me, studied my habits, my preferences, even dated my college roommate to learn more about me. Everything, from our accidental first encounter to his marriage proposal, had been carefully planned. I was never the love of his life. I was just another acquisition target. Catherine's involvement went deeper too. Remember those shell companies we uncovered? Turns out some of them traced back to my mother's old boarding school friend, Margaret Chin. When we dug deeper, we discovered Margaret had died under mysterious circumstances 15 years ago, right after my mother had visited her in Hong Kong. Catherine had been Margaret's corporate lawyer at the time. The web of betrayal and deceit was more intricate than I could have imagined. It wasn't just about taking over our company. It was about dismantling my entire family's legacy, piece by piece. They'd been patient, methodical, working their plan for years before I even knew there was a game being played. The investigation into Mom's crash revealed something else. The pilot had received a substantial payment 2 days before the accident. The money came from one of Alexander's earliest shell companies. He'd been plotting my family's destruction long before he ever met me, using Catherine and her children as his pawns. Marcus, it turns out, was just as much a victim as he was a perpetrator. During his trial, evidence emerged of Alexander's blackmail. Marcus had a gambling problem, and Alexander had used that weakness to force his cooperation. But instead of coming clean, Marcus had doubled down, convincing himself that if he couldn't have the company honestly, He'd take it by any means necessary. The truth is, some days the weight of everything still crushes me. I'll walk into my father's old office, my office now, and catch a whiff of his cologne, or see Mom's handwriting on an old file, and it all comes rushing back. The betrayals, the losses, the sheer magnitude of what was taken from me. But then I remember what Uncle Robert told me the day we launched our counterattack. Success isn't just about winning, Elena. It's about how you win and what you do with that victory. So I've started a scholarship program in Mom's name, funding education for children who've lost parents to corporate crimes. I've established an ethics oversight committee that would make Dad proud. And most surprisingly, I've begun working with other family-owned businesses to help them protect themselves from the kind of corporate raiders that nearly destroyed us. Last week, I hired a young woman as our new head of Asian operations. She reminds me a bit of myself at that age, brilliant, ambitious, maybe a little too trusting. But instead of letting her learn life's lessons the hard way, I've taken her under my wing. Because maybe that's the real victory, not just surviving betrayal, but using that experience to help others avoid the same fate. Sometimes at night, I still look out from my office window at the empire I've built from the ashes of their betrayal. But now, instead of just smiling at what I've accomplished, I think about what's next. Because in trying to destroy me, they didn't just make me indestructible. They showed me that true strength isn't in what you can take, but in what you can give back. And that's not just a lesson worth learning. It's a legacy worth building. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. 3 months ago, I received another letter, this time from a maximum security prison in Nevada. It was from Alexander, and what he revealed shook everything I thought I knew about my family's history. The letter contained old photographs, dozens of them. Pictures of my great-grandfather with Alexander's grandfather, standing together on a dock in Shanghai, 1924. The same dock where our company's first ship launched. According to Alexander, our families didn't just know each other. They were business partners. His grandfather had provided half the initial capital to start Richardson Global Logistics, but my great-grandfather had betrayed him, using legal loopholes to push him out of the company entirely. Alexander claimed his family's destruction had been generations in the making. His father had raised him on stories of our family's betrayal, grooming him from childhood to be the instrument of their revenge. The photos came with documents, yellowed contracts, old letters, even a newspaper clipping about his grandfather's suicide after losing everything. I spent weeks verifying everything. Uncle Robert helped me dig through ancient corporate records, track down surviving witnesses from that era. The worst part? It was all true. My great-grandfather, the man I'd idolized as a visionary entrepreneur, had built our empire on a foundation of betrayal. The revelation sent me into a tailspin. How much of who we are is shaped by sins we didn't even know we'd inherited? Was I any better than Alexander, thinking my revenge was justified because I was the one who'd been wronged? I found myself standing outside Alexander's prison one rainy Tuesday morning, visitor's pass in hand. He looked older than I remembered, prison aging him beyond his years. For 2 hours, we talked about our families, about revenge, about the weight of legacies we never asked for but couldn't escape. "We're not so different, you and I," he said near the end. "We both thought we were avenging something. The only difference is, you won. But winning doesn't feel like the right word anymore. Not when you realize you're just another link in a chain of revenge that stretches back nearly a century." So I made a decision that would have shocked the person I was a year ago. I tracked down Alexander's elderly aunt, his grandfather's last surviving child. She was living in a modest nursing home in Arizona, all family fortune long gone. I sat with her, showed her the photos, and listened to her side of the story. Then I did something that would either be the wisest or most foolish decision of my life. I offered to make it right. Not with money. That would be too easy, too clean. Instead, I proposed creating a joint charitable foundation, funded by Richardson Global Logistics, dedicated to helping family businesses resolve disputes before they turn into generational vendettas. The look on her face when I explained my plan. It was like watching a century of bitterness finally begin to crack. She cried, I cried, and somewhere in that messy, emotional moment, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about winning anymore. It wasn't even about redemption. It was about breaking a cycle that had destroyed too many lives for too long. The foundation launched last month. We named it Bridge the Divide, and its first case involves 2 feuding brothers who inherited their father's tech company. Watching them work through their issues with our mediators, I can't help but wonder how different things might have been if our families had had something like this 100 years ago. Catherine and Marcus are still serving their sentences. Olivia's still in witness protection. Alexander will spend most of his life behind bars. But now when I look out my office window at night, I'm not thinking about what I've built from the ashes of betrayal. I'm thinking about what we could all build together if we stopped trying to settle old scores and started trying to prevent new ones. Yesterday, I found an old photo of Mom in her office, probably taken a few months before the crash. She's smiling at the camera, looking confident and strong. I used to think she'd be proud of how I protected our family's legacy. Now I think she'd be prouder of how I'm trying to change it. Because sometimes the hardest part of breaking a cycle isn't winning the fight. It's being the first one willing to stop fighting. And maybe that's the real legacy worth building. Not an empire that stands on its own, but bridges that help others stand together. They say the past is never dead. It's not even past. But maybe, just maybe, we can learn to carry it differently. Not as a burden of revenge to bear, but as a lesson in how to do better. How to be better. And that's a story still being written, one bridge at a time. But life rarely gives us neat endings. Last month, while reviewing old security footage for the ongoing investigation into Mom's crash, our tech team discovered something extraordinary. In the background of a grainy video from our Hong Kong office, taken 3 days before her death, Mom was meeting with someone, Margaret Chen. The same Margaret Chen who had supposedly died 15 years earlier. The implications were staggering. If Margaret was alive in 2019, everything we thought we knew about Catherine's involvement had to be reconsidered. I hired private investigators, called in favors from contacts throughout Asia, and slowly, a different picture emerged. Margaret hadn't died in that accident 15 years ago. She'd faked her death to escape something. Or someone. The trail led us to a series of encrypted emails between her and my mother discussing something called Project Phoenix. The more we dug, the more complex it became. Mom and Margaret hadn't just been school friends. They'd been working together to expose a massive international money laundering operation, one that implicated some of the most powerful people in the shipping industry. Alexander's family's revenge plot was real, but it had intersected with something far bigger and more dangerous. Mom and Margaret had discovered that certain shipping routes, including some operated by Richardson Global Logistics, were being used to move billions in illegal funds. They'd been gathering evidence, building a case, preparing to blow the whistle on an entire network of corruption. The real shock came when we found Margaret. She was alive, living under an assumed name in a small town in New Zealand. When I flew out to meet her, she broke down in tears. "Your mother," she said, "was the bravest person I ever knew. And I've spent years living with the guilt of not being able to save her." The truth she revealed was devastating. Mom and Margaret had planned to expose everything simultaneously. Her in Asia, Mom in America. But someone had been tipped off. The crash wasn't just about Alexander's revenge. It was orchestrated by a consortium of corrupt executives who stood to lose everything if the truth came out. Catherine hadn't been the mastermind. She'd been their legal fixer, brought in to ensure the investigation died with my mother. This changed everything. The corruption Mom had discovered was still ongoing. The people responsible were still out there, still using shipping companies, including parts of Richardson Global Logistics, to move dirty money. I had won the battle for my company, but Mom's real fight was unfinished. I made a decision that would have terrified me a year ago. I decided to finish what she started. But this time, I wouldn't be working alone. I reached out to Marcus in prison, offering him a chance at redemption. His gambling addiction and financial expertise made him uniquely qualified to help us trace money laundering patterns. To my surprise, he agreed immediately. Olivia, still in witness protection, had banking contacts through her PR work. She became our eyes and ears in the financial sector. Even Alexander, perhaps seeking his own redemption, provided crucial information about corrupt executives he'd worked with. Uncle Robert thought I was crazy to trust any of them. "They betrayed you once," he warned. "But sometimes the people who've hit rock bottom are the ones you can trust most. They have nothing left to lose and everything to prove." We launched Operation Phoenix 6 months ago. It's slow, dangerous work. We've already uncovered links to human trafficking, drug cartels, and terrorist financing. Every discovery feels like another piece of Mom's legacy falling into place. Margaret works with us remotely, her expertise proving invaluable. The foundation we created, Bridge the Divide, serves as a perfect cover for our investigations. Catherine, facing new evidence of her role in Mom's death, finally broke her silence. Her testimony has helped us map out the entire corruption network. In exchange, we've arranged for her sentence to be served under house arrest. She'll never be part of my life again, but at least she's trying to make amends. 2 weeks ago, we had our first major breakthrough. Working with international law enforcement, we helped expose a $3 billion money laundering operation. It's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's a start. Mom would be proud, not just of the justice we're pursuing, but of how we're pursuing it. I've learned that true legacy isn't just about what we build or protect. It's about the battles we choose to fight, and more importantly, how we fight them. Sometimes the people we think are our enemies are just wounded souls looking for their own redemption. And sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying our opponents, but from helping them find their way back to the light. The company is stronger than ever, but it's no longer just about business success. We're building something my great-grandfather never envisioned. A force for positive change in an industry plagued by corruption. The old cycle of revenge has been transformed into a mission for justice. Last night, I had dinner with Olivia. We talked for hours about everything, the past, the present, our hopes for the future. There were tears, laughs, and finally, forgiveness. Real forgiveness, not the kind that comes from winning, but the kind that comes from understanding. Mom's original mission wasn't just about exposing corruption. It was about making the industry better, safer, more ethical. In trying to honor her memory through revenge, I'd almost missed the point entirely. Now, working alongside former enemies to continue her fight, I finally understand what she was trying to build. As I write this, I'm looking at 2 photos on my desk. One is the old picture of Mom in her office, smiling confidently at the camera. The other is newer, taken last week at our foundation's headquarters. It shows our unlikely team. Me, Marcus, via video call from prison, Olivia, Margaret, and several others, all working together on Project Phoenix. The contrast between these images tells the story of how far we've come. They say a masterpiece isn't just about the final picture. It's about the journey of creating it. Our story isn't finished. There are still battles to fight, truths to uncover, wrongs to right. But maybe that's what makes it beautiful. We're all works in progress, painting with the colors of our choices, our mistakes, and our attempts at redemption. The empire I inherited was built on secrets and betrayal. The one I'm building now is founded on truth and redemption. It's a harder path, but a better one. And somewhere, I hope Mom is watching, knowing that her sacrifice wasn't in vain. We're carrying her torch forward, not with vengeance, but with vision. Not with hatred, but with hope. That's the real conclusion. Not the ending, but the endless possibility of what comes next. And those possibilities turned out to be more dramatic than I could have imagined. 3 days ago, our investigation into the money laundering network led us to a startling discovery. A series of transactions dating back to the day of Mom's crash, originating from an account in the Cayman Islands. The account holder's name? James Richardson for my father. At first, I thought it was a mistake or a setup. Dad couldn't have been involved. He was the victim, the grieving husband who'd lost everything. But as we dug deeper, the evidence became undeniable. Regular payments, encrypted communications, meetings that had been carefully hidden from company records. Dad had known about the corruption. More than that, he'd been profiting from it for years. The hardest part wasn't finding out that Dad was involved. It was realizing that Mom must have known. The evidence she and Margaret had been gathering, it would have implicated him too. She'd been preparing to expose her own husband, knowing it would destroy our family, because it was the right thing to do. When I confronted Margaret with this revelation, she finally broke down and told me the full truth. "Your mother came to me that last week," she said, tears streaming down her face. She knew exposing everything would mean losing James, losing the company, losing everything she'd built. But she said some prices are worth paying for the truth. The crash wasn't just about silencing a whistleblower. It was about a husband eliminating the threat his wife posed to his criminal enterprise. Dad's subsequent depression, his rapid marriage to Catherine, his insistence on keeping me involved in the company. It had all been calculated. He'd needed to maintain control, to ensure the corruption could continue under the guise of legitimate business. Catherine hadn't been just a convenient widow to marry. She'd been his co-conspirator from the start. Their relationship predated Mom's death by at least 2 years. The insurance settlement she'd handled? It had been designed to hide the real cause of the crash. Even Dad's cancer diagnosis had been faked, a ploy to manipulate me emotionally and ensure a smooth transition of power to their chosen successor. The revelation shattered me. Every childhood memory, every moment I treasured with Dad, was now tainted by the knowledge of his true nature. The man I'd loved, the father I'd idolized, had been a facade. Behind it lurked someone capable of having his own wife killed to protect his secrets. But the most chilling discovery was yet to come. Hidden in the encrypted files, we found evidence that Dad wasn't dead at all. The body in his grave belonged to a homeless man who died of natural causes, a convenient stand-in while Dad escaped with billions in laundered money. Recent surveillance photos showed him alive and well, living on a private island in the South Pacific. The betrayal ran deeper than I could have imagined. Not just the company, not just the family legacy, but every single moment of my life had been built on lies. The father who taught me to ride a bike, who'd kissed my scraped knees and cheered at my graduations. He was also the man who'd ordered my mother's death and orchestrated an elaborate plot to control my future. Marcus was the first to notice I was spiraling. From his prison cell, he sent me a letter that cut through my darkness. "Elena, don't let this destroy what you've built. Your mother died trying to expose the truth. Honor her by finishing what she started." He was right. This wasn't just about family betrayal anymore. It was about justice on a global scale. The corruption network we'd uncovered was funding terrorism, human trafficking, and drug cartels across 5 continents. Dad's private island paradise was built on human suffering. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I would bring my own father to justice. Not for revenge, not for inheritance, but because it's what Mom would have done. It's what she died trying to do. We've launched what we're calling Operation Patricide, a coordinated effort to dismantle Dad's entire network. We're working with international law enforcement, intelligence agencies, and financial regulators. Every piece of evidence we uncover brings us closer to him. Olivia's role has become crucial. Her PR expertise is helping us manage the media fallout as we gradually expose the corruption. Marcus's insights into the financial structures are invaluable. Even Alexander, from his prison cell, provides critical intelligence about Dad's old contacts and methods. Catherine, facing new evidence of her complicity in Mom's murder, has finally turned state's witness. Her testimony could be the key to bringing Dad to justice. In exchange, she's offered information about other corporate criminals connected to the network. The foundation we created, Bridge the Divide, has evolved into something Mom would have been proud of, a global initiative to combat corporate corruption and protect whistleblowers. We've already helped expose similar schemes in 3 other major shipping companies. Yesterday, we received intelligence that Dad is planning to move locations. He knows we're closing in, but this time, he's not facing a grieving widow or a naive daughter. He's facing the combined forces of international justice, led by the woman he underestimated most, the daughter who learned from both his cunning and her mother's courage. The empire he built on blood money is crumbling. The truth he killed to protect is finally coming to light. And I'm no longer fighting just for revenge or legacy. I'm fighting for every person his corruption has harmed, every life his greed has destroyed. Mom's final message to Margaret makes sense now. Sometimes the greatest act of love is being willing to destroy everything to protect what's right. She knew the price of truth would be devastating, but she was willing to pay it. Now it's my turn to follow in her footsteps, to finish what she started, no matter the cost. They say the sins of the father are visited upon the children, but sometimes the children rise above those sins, transforming them into stepping stones toward justice. This isn't just my story anymore. It's a battle for the soul of an industry, a fight against corruption that spans generations. And I won't stop until it's finished. For Mom, for justice, for every person who's ever had to choose between truth and comfort, between right and easy. Some prices are worth paying, some battles worth fighting, some truths worth dying for. This is my masterpiece, not a painting hung in a gallery, but a mission that will outlive me. And somewhere, I hope Mom is watching, knowing that her sacrifice wasn't in vain. The truth she died protecting will finally see the light of day. The game isn't over. It's only just beginning. 2 months after launching Operation Patricide, we finally cornered Dad on his private island. The raid was a masterpiece of international cooperation. Interpol, FBI, and local authorities moving in perfect synchronization. I insisted on being there, watching from a command center as special forces breached his compound. But Dad had one final surprise waiting. As authorities closed in, he triggered explosives rigged throughout the complex. In the chaos that followed, he attempted to escape by helicopter. What he didn't know was that Marcus had anticipated this move. Using his knowledge of Dad's escape protocols, we'd positioned snipers at strategic locations. They didn't shoot to kill, just disabled the helicopter's tail rotor. The crash wasn't fatal, but the irony wasn't lost on anyone. Dad survived a helicopter crash, unlike Mom. When they pulled him from the wreckage, he locked eyes with me. For a moment, I saw something I'd never seen before in his face. Fear. Not of arrest or punishment, but of me. Of what I'd become, someone stronger than he'd ever anticipated. The evidence we uncovered in his compound was staggering. Decades of criminal enterprises, hundreds of murdered whistleblowers, billions in laundered money. Mom had only scratched the surface of his corruption. The investigation expanded to include human trafficking rings, arms deals, and political bribes across 40 countries. Catherine's testimony proved crucial in untangling the web. In exchange for a reduced sentence, she provided evidence that implicated dozens of corporate executives and political figures. Olivia's PR expertise helped us manage the media storm as each revelation broke, ensuring the truth couldn't be buried again. Margaret finally came out of hiding to testify. Watching her face Dad in court, describing how he'd orchestrated Mom's murder, was one of the hardest days of my life. But her testimony also brought an unexpected gift. She had secret recordings of Mom from their last meeting. Hearing Mom's voice again, her determination to expose the truth no matter the cost, gave me the strength to face what came next. The trial lasted 6 months. Dad maintained his innocence until the end, trying to paint himself as a victim of circumstance. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury took just 4 hours to find him guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder. The judge's sentence was unprecedented. For consecutive life terms with no possibility of parole, Alexander, surprisingly, became a key witness from prison. His testimony about the generational feud helped establish the historical pattern of corruption in the shipping industry. In recognition of his cooperation, his sentence was reduced. He'll still serve 20 years, but he's found purpose in helping other companies identify and prevent corporate fraud. Marcus's gambling addiction turned out to be a blessing in disguise. His intimate knowledge of money laundering schemes helped us trace and recover billions in hidden assets. The courts reduced his sentence to time served plus 5 years of supervised release. He now works with our foundation, using his experience to help other addicts avoid being exploited by criminal enterprises. Olivia emerged from witness protection to lead our corporate transparency initiative. Her journey from unwitting accomplice to passionate reformer has inspired others to come forward with evidence of corruption. Together, we've helped expose similar schemes in dozens of companies worldwide. Richardson Global Logistics has been completely transformed. We've implemented the industry's strictest anti-corruption measures and established a whistleblower protection program that's become the gold standard. The company Mom dreamed of building, ethical, transparent, focused on positive impact, is finally a reality. Last week, I visited Dad in prison. He's aged decades in just a few months, his arrogance replaced by a hollow defeat. I didn't go for closure or forgiveness. Some things are beyond forgiveness. I went to return his wedding ring, the one he'd worn while plotting Mom's death. She would have forgiven you, I told him. That's what made her stronger than you'll ever be. His response was unexpected. For the first time, he broke down. Through tears, he confessed everything. How he loved Mom once, before greed corrupted him. How watching me grow up to be like her had terrified him. How every attempt to control me had only made me more like her. In the end, he didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said, "She would be proud of you." I'm sorry I wasn't. The foundation has expanded beyond anything we imagined. Bridge the Divide now operates in 30 countries, helping companies transition from corruption to legitimate business practices. We've established a legal fund for whistleblowers and their families, ensuring no one has to choose between truth and survival. Margaret has become a mentor to young executives, teaching them to recognize and resist the temptations that lead to corruption. Her experiences, combined with Mom's story, serve as powerful warnings about the true cost of corporate greed. The most surprising development? Alexander's daughter, Sarah, recently joined our team. She's brilliant, ethical, and determined to redeem her family's legacy. Watching her work alongside Olivia and Marcus, I see the possibility of genuine change, not just in our company, but in the industry as a whole. Today, I'm announcing my biggest move yet. Richardson Global Logistics is transitioning to a new corporate structure. We're becoming a benefit corporation, legally obligated to consider social and environmental impact alongside profit. The company will be overseen by a board that includes former whistleblowers, ethics experts, and representatives from communities affected by corporate crime. Mom's office remains exactly as she left it. Now a reminder of what one person's courage can accomplish. Her last message to Margaret is engraved on a plaque in our headquarters. The truth is expensive, but lies cost everything. The empire Dad built on corruption is gone. In its place stands something far more valuable, a legacy of truth, justice, and redemption. The price was higher than anyone could have imagined. But as Mom knew, some prices are worth paying. They say every story has an ending. But maybe the best stories don't end. They transform. This one has become bigger than revenge, bigger than family drama, bigger than corporate intrigue. It's become a movement, a mission, a testament to the power of truth over lies, courage over fear, and justice over greed. And somewhere, I know Mom is smiling. Because in the end, love won, truth won, justice won. The game might be over, but the real work is just beginning. And this time, we're all in it together. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more real-life stories.